Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Dota 2 Star Ladder China upper bracket matches. This should be an absolutely fantabulous game. Newbee.Y up against EHOME Luminous in looking to hopefully turn this one back around for EHOME Luminous. They did end up losing the first match pretty convincingly off the back of some very solid Wind Ranger play, and this time around looking like it's not going to be a Wind Ranger that can potentially get picked up. Yet again, I'm at Lyrical Dota, joined today by at GrandisV. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing all right, just the same as game number one, Newbee.Y. This is a terrifying way to start off the draft. SCC, he showed how potent he is when you give him the space. The Wind Ranger took away that game from EHOME, absolutely destroying their momentum. After they got their early Blink Dagger on the starter, pretty quick level 6 on the Bounty Hunter, I thought, you know what, everything's kind of starting to work well for them, and this should mesh nicely, but every single one of those fights was just overtaken by Newbee.Y's mid, and I've seen him do that a lot. SEC is one of those players that maybe not a lot of people have heard of, but I think you can put him in ranks with some of the best, at least in the China scene. And they'll follow that with a Doom, but already well into the draft. Tusk Undying and then a Huskar. EHOME Luminous sticking to their aggressive playstyle that we saw from game number one, although with different heroes.
Yeah, this is looking to be a little bit scary right now. They basically were just able to roll on over the opponents throughout the whole course of the game, and it definitely seems like it's one of those situations where this is the type of playstyle they're comfortable with. Considering that Dazzle didn't end up getting banned out, I think that this is Newbee simultaneously taking it to help out the Shadow Fiend, but also to be able to deny it away from the Huskar. But what is this draft we're even seeing today? So Shadow Fiend, Tusk, Doom, Undying, Dazzle, Huskar, Abaddon going to be picked up. Alchemist, Ancient Apparition banned out, as well as the Viper and the Ursa yet again into a Broodmother. What the hell is even happening here? I was expecting to see something similar to the last game, but this is looking to be all kinds of crazy.
You know what? This comes back to what we were talking about in the first game, where there's a lot of focus on these defensive supports. We saw Abaddon, played by Lanham, to great success in the Frankfurt Major, and I think that it is a hero that should be picked up a little bit more, especially in combination with the Huskar. Is a very terrifying combo. In a vacuum, I think EHOME Luminous draft is very good, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're very well equipped to deal with what Newbee.Y are bringing to the table. Undying, Abaddon, Tusk have mediocre ways of clearing out spiders. Huskar is awful at doing that, although yeah, there's just not really an option for him there. You have the Doom that is naturally going to build in that Axe to disable that Huskar's passives, a massive amount of physical damage from the Shadow Fiend Broodmother, amped up by Dazzle's Weave. It really feels like, although there is a chance that EHOME Luminous can win this game, it's almost exclusively reliant on them snowballing, and we saw how well Newbee.Y were able to react to those early smoke rotations. They were very projected. It's very obvious when they're going for that. You know this is about the time, hey, their starter's about to pick up a Blink Dagger, or maybe this game, their Huskar is about to pick up an Armlet, or something along those lines. And Newbee.Y, I think they're prepared. This is just, these four heroes, Shadow Fiend, Doom, Dazzle, Broodmother, are some of the most terrifying to let through in a draft.
Yeah, and what does look like we're going to be seeing, sort of trying to ban away that, what could be a very, I mean, you do look at these lineups and they're terrifying, it's true. Broodmother going to be able to just run all over you, throw spiders everywhere, but EHOME's lineup is all about that push, all about that tear through you early, throw on down the tombstone. I also want to mention real quickly, sorry about the problems at the very beginning, getting all this game started up. There were a few computer problems apparently, and that was what was causing the long delays. They have hopefully now all been fixed, but just wanted to let you guys know why it was that there was such a long break between game 1 and game 2, and hopefully if there's a game 3 we won't end up having that same type of issue. But EHOME looking to have a very solid draft for building around a particular idea, which is pushing early, trying to keep these lanes pushed on out, and I think that Broodmother is a pretty good answer to this, because you're going to be able to split push them away. What I'm wondering if they try and double down on this, or maybe just go into another hero here that can kind of, another support that can keep the lanes pushed out, maybe even something, well, Ancient Apparition's already banned out. Is there anybody in particular that really sparks your fancy?
Not really. The Ancient Apparition, of course, is the obvious choice, but yeah, as already mentioned, that's been banned. There's not a hero that functions in that same role, which is always something very interesting about the AA. I'd love to see something else added to the game that counters this mass sustained healing, so it's not so easy to pull off a draft like this. It is worth noting that the Broodmother might get caught in a situation where she's just not able to push fast enough to keep up with the pace of the Pugna. It looks like this Pugna is going to be getting a lot of space in the draft coming out from Luminous, and maybe even as a safe lane farmer against the Broodmother, which I think he'd be able to get a reasonable amount of farm there. It is always very terrifying to leave the Pugna solo. Don't do that. But he should be able to get his levels up at the very least and start grouping up with the team. The timing window for EHOME Luminous is very, very specific. For Newbee.Y, maybe just another defensive counter pushing support. Something like an Earthshaker wouldn't be bad here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to see how this ends up working out. It certainly seems like they're in a situation where, Pugna needs to be able to have some type of ability to deal with this. The ward is going to do probably a lot of damage. Also, that Shadow Fiend, who can totally be in a lot of trouble. I don't know. Witch Doctor is the last pick there. Somebody who can early fight, have a little bit of sustain in lane. This is pretty good. I'm curious to see how this works out. I don't know if it's the greatest answer against, being able to need to constantly keep waves cleared out. But of course, the cask does bounce around a lot. I don't know. Do you think that they've answered the problems that have come up here?
Not perfectly. I think their draft is still better than EHOME Luminous, but there is going to be a big timing window where EHOME have the edge and where they have these tools available, and it might be very difficult for Newbee.Y to manage. If there's just one or two mistakes coming out from Newbee.Y, and maybe they lose a couple of heroes here and there, EHOME Luminous have a draft that's very good at punishing that, moving into objectives. With the Huskar, they can take down Roshan in a pretty early timing window. Pugna's great at transitioning that into towers, and at a certain point, you just have way too many things you need to focus. You have a Nether Ward, you have the Undying's Tombstone, then you have a Huskar flying at you. It's going to be pretty crazy. We'll have to see if Newbee.Y are going to be able to weather the storm. If they can take this long enough to where they get those crucial item pickups, especially like the Ags up for the Doom or maybe like a Silver Edge for the Shadow Fiend, this could get very hard.
Absolutely. Taking a look at the lovely courier here from the Radiant side, a little baby Roshan. Always nice to see him, but does look like we're going to be seeing a bit of a dual lane here. Huskar and Abaddon, always something that's a little bit terrifying to go against. I mean, it's not the worst lane in the world to go up against, I think. Obviously, you're able to get the Aphotic Shield that goes down on top of Huskar, but until Huskar gets 6, I still think that that lane is manageable, as long as you've got the heroes that can deal with it. Doom isn't necessarily the greatest, but he can heal significantly more effectively than a lot of other heroes. And one of the parts of Huskar's kit that people don't often talk about is that at the early levels, Burning Spears actually can do just about as much damage to Huskar as it ends up doing to the opponent. And if you're not careful, you can end up killing yourself with the minus damage that you end up getting from it. Now, we are seeing a little bit of a battle over here to the side, as it looks like Abaddon was trying to find a place to drop on down this ward, but if he does end up dropping it anywhere, they're going to be able to keep complete and total eyes on it. No Alchemist this game, but still early runes are very important, and Shadow Fiend heading down for the bottom one, while we're going to be seeing the trade-off of, is this going to be the Pugna in the mid lane now? Very interesting.
Yeah, it looks like that is going to be the matchup. They're going to look for the bounty runes. Shadow Fiend picks up his, Pugna snags his own. But yeah, SF versus Pugna, not a matchup you're going to see very often, and I think for good reason. Pugna just doesn't have a great way to contest Shadow Fiend's farm. The animation's a little bit clunky for Pugna, although right now he has a good amount of damage. One of the big selling points of Pugna in the mid lane is the fact that he can push out the wave faster than most other mids, but Shadow Fiend's one of the big exceptions. You just can't compete with double raises.
I guess my question is it ever worth it to try and go for more points in that early Nether Ward to try and deny out the ability to raise away the wave, or is that just on too long of a cooldown for really to make it being effective?
I don't think that's going to be the game plan for him. Of course, getting the points in Nether Ward will be nice, but not over the Nether Blast, of course. He needs to at least be able to keep up with the SF. But yeah, maybe sacrificing some points to Decrep would be fine.
That's kind of the thing that I'm wondering about here, because if you're thinking about this matchup, of course, it's basically who can push out the wave more effectively, who's going to be able to last hit at the early stages. They are trading farm relatively evenly at this point. Actually, Pugna 3 and 4 versus the 0 and 3 of the Shadow Fiend. But it's always a bit scary. There's the ward that doesn't end up getting dropped down, and now all of a sudden you can't raise as effectively as a Shadow Fiend.
Yeah, it's still not awful. Raze has a fairly low mana cost, and once he has the bottle, he'll be able to sustain even with a little bit of mana burn here and there. As far as the other lanes are concerned, I think these ones definitely have more kill potential, although a lot of the focus from Newbee.Y is going to be put on this mid lane with the Witch Doctor meandering over there. The Dazzle versus Doom, Abaddon versus Huskar, and then the Undying versus the Broodmother. There's going to be a lot of traded blows, but not any clear ability for these teams to take first blood. In fact, I really have no idea where it's going to happen. It's going to rely on somebody making one too many steps towards the enemy side.
I mean, if Broodmother keeps on walking on out here into the middle of nowhere with no webs, that could definitely be a bit of a problem. We do have a snowball on up, and it looks like Brood is going to have to run back the other direction. Only right now, oh, picking on up the Undying as well. Yeah, this could be a bit of a problem. They're going to end up dropping out the dust, and there's first blood.
Other side of the map, Hasted Abaddon chasing Witch Doctor.
Not going to be able to find this kill as of yet. We did actually have a Maledict first picked up now by the Witch Doctor, but with the haste, as well as having that aphotic shield up, this is going to end up getting burned, trapped on in by the creeps. I think this is going to be a kill here. Dazzle trying to do everything it can. No, it's actually going to get turned around, trying to stay alive, but the Abaddon ends up going down, trying to get out of experience range, and we'll see actually if he did manage to do that. No, it looks like the Witch Doctor was able to get a little bit of experience, although the Dazzle wasn't. So kind of a cool little play.
Yeah, it's totally worth it for Newbee Young. They don't get as much gold and as much experience as they could have, I suppose, on both of their supports, but Witch Doctor is going to be happy. That could have been a disaster. It's terrifying to see a hasted hero. It doesn't matter who they are. Abaddon, no exception, running after fairly squishy support, at least at this stage, with no direct answer. To mention it, the Maledict picked up, just to trade hits as effectively as possible. This is gonna be pretty good for them, but now the Burning Spears are level 2 and things get really hard for the Doom and for the Dazzle.
Oh, the body blocks abound. This is looking like it's a bit of a dangerous situation. Doom is gonna die, and I think that potentially this is gonna be a Dazzle as well. Does he actually survive through that? Oh, Doom, you are a stupid, stupid hero. I hate you so much. Selves on up through it as well with the Scorched Earth coming out, and thankfully at least they end up getting a kill on the Dazzle, but that's gotta be so frustrating to end up getting down to, like, I don't know what HP he was at, but that was just silly.
Yeah, I'm not sure who I hate more, Huskar or Doom. Like, dying in the base as a support, that just feels so bad, and Doom just barely able to survive there. Yeah, just a straightforward kill for EHOME, even though they don't get the kill that they wanted on the Doom. They're still doing very well in these lanes, especially mid. I'm just blown away by how well this Pugna is doing against the Shadow Fiend. This isn't a super huge surprise, I suppose, that he has an edge, but he's doubling up the SF, and it looks like EHOME are getting pretty much everything they could want. Although Newbee are behind, they still aren't out of this game by any means. They have the ability to flash farm, but right now, Broodmother going to be killed off bottom lane. There's just way too much detection here for her to feel comfortable.
I think that they're going to be able to find out the Shadow Fiend now. They are coming on over here to try and steal on off the stack, and it looks like Pugna is going to be able to get it. Sorry I ended up missing that kill there. Raze is coming out. It does look like Abaddon's going to get away. Oh, I think he goes down. Ends up denying himself as well.
Nice deny.
Very well played there. That is going to be the Nether Ward picked on up for the Shadow Fiend, but they steal a lot of his stack, and now Pugna trying to run away. It's worth noting Pugna's a pretty quick hero. 380 movement speed with the boots, and should be able to outrun any potential followers. So kind of nice there. You end up getting the deny on the Abaddon, steal the stack away from the Shadow Fiend. I think that's a relatively decent trade, and as you mentioned, the Pugna already 25 and 12. It's having a whale of a time against the Shadow Fiend here.
Yeah, that's huge. Shadow Fiend still has an edge when it comes to net worth against the Pugna, so there is a little bit of a disadvantage there. Still just making sure the Shadow Fiend is slowed down as much as possible. You can't stop a Shadow Fiend from farming, but you can slow him down, and that's what they've accomplished with that rotation. Interestingly enough, EHOME are going to switch up their lanes. As the Broodmother goes top, the Undying wants to follow her, and the Huskar is going to make his way down to the bottom lane.
Very interesting. 2 points in the decay as well. It does look like they're going to come on in here and potentially find out the Shadow Fiend. Shard's committed. The Grave is there, and I think that he's going to still go down here at this point in time. Maybe? Can he? Yeah, they end up getting that kill. I don't think there's any way he got out of there, even with all the heals coming out from Dazzle. So Tusk ends up picking up another kill there. That's going to be 2-0-1 for him, so a good start. They haven't really been able to limit the Broodmother's effectiveness, and again, the stacks are just not there at this point for the Shadow Fiend. He doesn't have what he needs to be able to sort of accelerate into farm like you normally end up seeing him. And if you take a look at the net worth right now, Huskar 2,700, Shadow Fiend 1,800. This is not where you want to be as an SF.
Yeah, definitely not. This is going to be a very scary timing window before Newbee have all of the tools that they need to really fight effectively. The Broodmother, despite not having a huge amount of farm yet, is still doing the best out of her teammates, and it's going to start accelerating inside the woods. The Broodmother is having a pretty normal brood game, and that is also a bit scary for EHOME. Despite having one of the best teams balling up early and going for those 5-man pushes, they don't have great catch for the brood.
Well, this is the thing that I'm kind of curious about this game. It seemed like in the last game that we ended up casting between these two, EHOME was really struggling, and it felt like they were getting almost consistently outplayed by Newbee.Y. And I think that to try and remedy this, basically what they've done is they've gone for a crazy early game centric lineup. They want to try and end this as quickly as possible, and I think that if this game goes 20 minutes, or more than like 20 to 25 minutes, probably Newbee.Y are going to take it, I think. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but just based upon their lineups, you know, if you're going to be having a core Huskar, and that's the hardest carry that you've got on your lineup, you're not really scaling well into the late game.
Mid lane, the fight for the catapult is going to be won by the Pugna, but yeah, it does feel like they definitely are in a timer. I mean, the game can go a little bit longer than that, but they have to have a significant lead by that timing window, like taking racks type significant lead. In game number 1, it's not like EHOME were completely out of the game early, though. The early game felt very even, or very close to it. In fact, maybe even having a slight lead. The Slaughter got a lot more farm than his counterpart in the offlane, and it wasn't until they started grouping up that they ended up losing that lead. And that's really where things took a turn for the worse for EHOME. So we'll have to see how well they're able to transition this early advantage, and those big items, or at least the first round of items, are coming up now. We have the Huskar with his armlet and the bracer. The Pugna has a massive amount of sustain behind him, has level 7. That's all you really need for the Pugna to start grouping up and pushing.
Yeah. This is such a scary position right now. Like, everything is so tense. Mid lane, you've got 3 heroes just trying to trade off and see if they can take on down this tier 1. Obviously, Shadow Fiend and Dazzle great at being able to keep that wave pushed out. And off to the side, Doom is just ready to throw on out some amount of burning, Scorched Earth, and just walk on into the middle of everybody. But it's such a tense moment. Up top as well, the Tusk, who is sort of facing off against the Broodmother, it feels like at any given point in time, one of these teams is really going to break open the lead. And it does feel like the first big team fight that gets won is definitely going to swing the dynamic of this game. Although you would expect that EHOME would probably take him at the early stages. So we do have Freeze run forward. The Tombstone has been committed. Now Shards catches onto 2, but Tusk gets taken out by that Shadow Fiend. Then you don't have the coconuts bouncing, and it looks like Abaddon might end up going down. Aphotic Shield has been committed. He ends up getting healed by the Soul Rep. Another couple of damage coming on out from both the Decay as well as the Nether Ward, and it does look like they're finally going to be able to take on down that tower with the Pugna Blast. And 500 gold swing, but they get the tower.
That's kind of to be expected, though. At this point in the game, if EHOME aren't taking towers, something is very wrong. I think Newbee will just be happy that they get something and trade for it. And also, a tier 1 tower top has been destroyed by the Broodmother. Sure, they're able to group up and take down the mid-tier 1, but there's always going to be something else being picked up by Newbee elsewhere on the map.
Yeah. Let's take a look at net worth right now. We've sort of been in this situation where it's about 1,500 gold lead. There's not a huge significant advantage. Experience, it's about 2K, and item-wise, we haven't really seen that one big item coming up. I think that the Pugna mech that's coming up really soon here is probably going to be one of the more significant items in this game. Obviously, the Huskar armlet is huge, and also the Broodmother Hand of Midas is something that is going to sort of double down on that later stage advantage. So I kind of am feeling like now, once that Pugna gets the mech, you start grouping up again for another tower, or it looks like they're even ready to go beforehand. I mean, just getting the auras and the buckler up there, they're ready to start pushing, and just going to keep off to the side now, this Tusk waiting to keep the Broodmother off of the tier 2s, and hopefully they're able to take this tower relatively effectively. And just look at how quickly it goes down. That's just silly.
Yeah, it was already not too healthy to begin with, and just taken down just a couple of seconds. This time around, there is no direct trade for Newbee. They had to push out the mid lane, although Catapult is going to start getting away at that tier 1 tower there. They should be able to manage this Shadow Fiend. Still, it feels like Newbee are getting enough to where this is not a terrible state of the game for them. EHOME had been stalled out at about that 1,500, 2,000 advantage for the longest of times.
This is a huge moment right now. The fact that Huskar isn't going to be able to take this Roshan because Broodmother ended up spotting them. I don't know exactly if they realized that this was going to happen or what, but whatever the case ends up being, they probably realized that with the armlet already up, they're going to go for it. Just being able to come on in there and deny it, even just by having your presence around. Soloing Rosh is a pretty tricky thing for Huskar, even if he's completely alone. Like, you have to be really on point with your armlet toggling, and if anybody comes on in there to try and mess with you, it can throw it all off.
Yeah, even the tiniest of spiders. If you stand in the right spot, he'll only hit you 3 times, so it's pretty easy, especially if you have the sustain from your allies in order to pull off those toggles, but only if there's nobody around, and that's just not something you can rely upon. Although for now, the spiders have all been brought down to the bottom lane to take out this tier 1 while they're pushing into the tier 2 tower mid. It was really cool to look at the vision coming out from Newbee.Y and see how fanned out and how much of the map was covered by those spiderlings. But that's all happening in the bottom lane. The tier 2 tower has fallen to the Undying.
Looks like they're going to come on over here and be able to take on out the Dazzle. Walrus Punch is going to be committed for that one. Brood ends up getting the last hit on the tower, but is a little bit separated from the rest of her webs at this point. There is only 2 webs over here, I think, and so because of that, if they wanted to, they could probably jump on in and find her, but not going to keep them. I mean, honestly, at this point, getting kills, I think, is less important than just trying to continue to press the objectives. And if they're able to do that, they're going to be in a really good spot. So we'll see if that's what they try and go for. Mechanism now finished on the Pugna. For the Undying, we do see only 1 level on the Tombstone. What do you think about that build there?
Not 100% sure if I like it. I think the Tombstone's an incredibly valuable tool when EHOME are going for these 5-man pushes. Still, the sustain that you get from the Soul Rip, especially if you're in Broodmother's lane, is also very potent, and it just changes the way that EHOME are going to push. It's not going to be focused or very centric on like the Netherward Tombstone, just dropping both of those. Although Netherward is still going to be a very potent force, it's going to be more focused on sustaining the Huskar and keeping him in the fight as long as possible. So it's a reasonable choice, I'd say, from the Undying. Although it's not my personal one, I think it still matches the playstyle they're going for.
Cool. All right, well, Huskar now, armlet, 600 gold on top of it. Hasn't really gone into another item. I will say that despite the fact they've been taking towers, Newbee.Y have definitely still been staying in this game by virtue of effective farming. You take a look at the way that the map is organized right now. You only have 1 hero anywhere else that's not in the bottom half of the map, and that's going to be the Tusk up top, trying to just keep any pressure off of the top lane that he possibly can. But all the rest of them are kind of grouped together, trying to push on out the waves, deal with the Brood Mother, and she's split pushing pretty effectively. We do have a jump on in. There's going to be a catch on to SCCC. They do have a Walrus Punch if they want to commit it here. Huskar is going to be in the area as well. Life breaks in on top of him. There's going to be the Shallow Grave on top of it. Do they have any way to break the TP? They don't. He did have a lot of stacks on top of him, and he's going to die in base. So well done there to be able to pick up that kill. And now that Shadow Fiend dead for another 30 seconds, and no tier 2 tower here either to dissuade them. Did they just go for this?
They're going to try, at the very least, without the Shadow Fiend raises. It's a lot harder for them to defend against this. Interesting pickup coming out from Jaja. He's going to have a Blade Mail for this up-and-coming fight. Good anti-Huskar attack, but is it going to be enough? EHOME are hammering away at their front door. Tier 3 under siege.
This tower is falling so freaking quickly, and there's no real way to be able to defend against it. Witch Doctor just now got level 6. Although that being said, even with the cask bouncing around, they're going to be able to... Well, the Tombstone does go down. Doom is up as well if they wanted to use that here on the Huskar. Who do you think is the best? Oh god, we're going to end up finding... Oh yeah, Broodmother goes down. Walrus Punch on top of her. And now you've got another hero that's been taken out of this fight. Who's the Doom target here for you?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the Pugna, maybe the Huskar. It's so hard to make the call, and he's going to go for it now straight on to Kaidu.
The Huskar ends up taking a lot of damage. He's going to be going down pretty quickly here. The Snowball keeping people alive a little bit longer, brings a couple other heroes in. Doom is going to end up falling. Maybe he is so freaking tanky. The Witch Doctor and the Dazzle very low, but this Pugna Ward has been doing so much work for them. And now you're just seeing them go right on into the barracks. They have so much sustain. Everybody is just happy as a clam. Pugna Blast coming on out. Doom is back in the middle of all of them. Nice Blade Mail there. Able to take on down the Huskar in the end. Finally, Doom is going to end up falling. Was that a dieback on him also? Tusk goes down, and they lose a barracks, the melee one at that, and god, EHOME are just monsters at this stage.
Yeah, to answer your question from earlier, it didn't matter who he doomed because they just had way too much sustain. We saw the Undying build come into play there in multiple ways. Of course, the Tombstone was taken down pretty much only by the Witch Doctor. He's able to do that very quickly, but just through the shields from the Abaddon, through the maxed out Soul Rip, the Huskar was able to delay that 15 seconds. Also with the defensive Snowball thrown in there for good measure. There was just nothing that Newbee could do to push him over the edge and actually kill him, even with denying away the Arblet. He just has so much strength. Power Tread, Sanj, Bracer, but now going for Roshan. Freeze walks around the corner.
All right, Tombstone ends up going down. Freeze is dropping a little bit low. It does look like they're going to go off the Requiem. Tombstone ended up falling there. Broodmother taking it out, and now the Shadow Fiend is going to end up fall. Have enough dust there for him to finish him off. And now EHOME are ready to take on out this Roshan. And they don't need to be waiting for anything at this point. Let's take a look at the end after that little engagement. Net worth there was still so much action going on, I couldn't even click on it. 4K currently in terms of the lead as far as EHOME goes. Experience, it's really not that significant, but they just don't have any way to deal with this draft. The early aggression coming out, that Pugna pick, everything they could want. Guardian Greaves now up on this hero. Sanj up on Huskar. Probably going to be building into a Halberd next, maybe? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, should be a Halberd next for him. Really, the net worth and the experience graphs don't tell the story of this game. What tells the story is how many objectives and how many towers EHOME have been able to take. You have the melee barracks falling in mid. The entire lane there lies in shambles. And then they've been able to secure this next Roshan. Still, the situation arises where this game is not over. Usually when you're looking at a 15 melee barracks, it's just GG. It's done. But Newbee have a team that can still push out against these waves of super creeps with raises coming out from the Shadow Fiend. And once they get their items, can still fight into the Huskar. Although this next 15 minutes is going to be super rocky. And if they want to win this game, it's going to be a long and drawn out process of holding time and time again.
I will say that they're pushing on out here. The tier 2 tower has already fallen up top, and they're applying a lot of pressure on the tier 3. Not able to get it, but I think that they can turn back around very quickly in these fights, and as you talked about in the last game, snap back pretty quickly. Also worth noting that the Shadow Fiend getting very close to picking on up his Shadow Blade. He just now has enough gold for it. Also is going to have level 2 Requiem of Souls for this next engagement, but he's not back in time to be able to defend against this as of yet. No TP scroll. He's going to be late for this one. Actually, it looks like the Courier's going to be flying it on out to him, and he's going to have Requiem back up. This is a pretty big moment right now. I think that they're going to be able to take this. Doom comes on forward. They do have the Requiem up in a second. The Sentry Ward has been committed now, though. Doom on top of the Huskar. Do they end up finding their kill, their initiation point? Lots of damage coming out on top of Pugna. He's going to end up going down. Does look like the casks are bouncing around enough. This is looking terrible right now for EHOME. Abaddon is going to end up popping the ulti. Now going to try and jump after him again. A Photic Shield. It kind of doesn't even matter. Huskar is really laying on into this Broodmother, but the Grave is going to keep her alive a little bit longer. I think that this is still going to end up being a kill on the Huskar if they can find it. Not going to quite be in range as of yet.
He's going to go back in.
Shard. God, it's just so terrifying right now. Almost no armor, but just look at everybody fall. Oh God, EHOME, they're doing what they need to do, but I think that Newbee.Y are going to end up paying the price for it. A triple kill right now for this Huskar. Armlet already on him. Doom is going to end up falling as well. They are just, oh God, it doesn't end up quite catching him with the shards, but still the tier 3 tower is going to fall.
Yeah, how do you deal with this Huskar? That's the second time where they've doomed him, and granted, they do eventually get the Aegis. Without the Aegis being Immortal, that fight does go pretty poorly for EHOME. But oh my goodness, you just can't stop him once he gets started. They have a lack of physical burst damage, which is not usually something you'd say when you have a Shadow Fiend, but he's just not hitting that hard, at least not hard enough onto the Huskar, who is now going to be presumably picking up his Helm of the Dominator, or at least the more mask towards that helm.
The plus side is they didn't end up gaining another lane of racks. Like, they won the fight, no
Silver
questions asked. And 5K net worth, we've talked about how it doesn't mean a ton, but it's still worth noting. And also, maybe once you end up getting a few more items here, you're going to be able to get all of that gold back to a large extent, because the towers are still there for the taking. They're big old, money pits for them, essentially, as are those spiders that just end up exploding on the Pugna and the other blast. I just don't know if they're going to end up making it to that stage. We talked about that 20-minute mark. If they're able to make it through this, I still think that they're going to be in a pretty decent position. Huskar getting stunned on up. Again, that evasion is just so key to him staying alive. Doom can get committed here again if they want to do it, but both times it hasn't really ended up working out. Tier 3 tower does finally end up falling. Tombstone now gone as well. So they're in a decent position, but now on the backside, it does look like the Broodmother is going to pull everybody else away to the side. If they wanted to now, they can commit again. Broodmother ends up going down, actually. And just like that, I thought that they left the Huskar up on the high ground, but he went with them. God, EHOME. This draft.
Yeah, a lot of it also comes down to the way they're itemizing. It might look odd for viewers to see a buckler on this Undying, but the amount of plus armor that they're giving to this Huskar is ridiculous. Just look at their HP pools melt.
Oh God. Oh. All right, Witch Doctor, he's still alive. Doom ends up coming down there. Requiem of Souls is going to come out. This felt like it's the last hurrah for them, but I don't think it's going to end up being enough. Broodmother is going to end up falling here in a second. Shallow Grave or not, they're on top of her. Witch Doctor ulti fully committed for that one, but I think that at this point he's going to have so much sustain. He's even got the salve still on the Abaddon if he wants to. Looks like they're going to be able to take on out this Dazzle. Another barracks is going to end up falling, and Is this a cheese draft? Is that essentially what this is
Oh,
here?
yeah.
All right. Well,
This
EHOME ended
is
up
the
taking it.
cheesiest.
Very interesting style. They end up being able to take it 21 minutes. It didn't end up lasting that long. What are your thoughts on this one and how they end up approaching the next game for Newbee.Y?
Ban Huskar or pick AA, I think, is the situation for Newbee.Y. It's very rare that we see a draft start out with Shadow Fiend and Doom end so poorly for them. And I don't think it's any one hero's fault inside the draft. You just give EHOME Luminous something that they're comfortable with. This is the playstyle that they like going for. They put Kaido on a very aggressive strength carry, and they just go nuts. And we'll have to see if they're able to pull that off in game number 3, which should be happening in just a bit.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys again so much for watching. It's an absolute pleasure casting for you guys. We'll be back in a second with game 3 of this series to see who ends up going on in the upper bracket and who ends up dropping down into that lower bracket. Stick around. We'll be right back.